Good morning, Algebra 2. You should have already watched the Ed Puzzle number 10, Quadratic Formula Part 1. If you have not, please do that first, because this is going to build on that first video. So, the quadratic formula is the formula used to solve a quadratic equation, and it will work for any quadratic. So, take a look at this example right here. So, y equals x squared plus 4x plus 5. If we were to try to graph that, this is what the graph would look like. So, what are the solutions? Well, since it does not cross the x-axis, there are no real solutions. That means graphing will not work for this quadratic. The other method you should have seen was factoring. So factoring splits it up into two polynomials. So you looked to see what two numbers multiply to get 5 and add to get 4. Well, what are factors of 5? Well, 1 and 5 and negative 1 and 5. Do either of those add to get 4? No. So factoring does not work. There were two other methods that we had not talked about during ESS. There was solving by square roots. That don't work because of this middle piece right here. And completing the square does not work. So we must use the quadratic formula. So remember our quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So the first thing we need to do is we need to determine what are a, b, and c. So really, this 1 won't be there. So if there's no number in front, that's an invisible 1. So a is 1, b is 4, c is 5. We're going to plug those three numbers into our formula. So be careful, it's the negative or the opposite of b. So opposite of 4 is negative 4. Plus or minus square root 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 5 all over 2 times 1. So we plug all of our numbers in. Now we want to simplify. And we're going to start by simplifying just this piece right here. So what is 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 5? We get negative 4. We can also simplify the bottom. 2 times 1 is just 2. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is simplify the square root. So what is the square root of negative 4? Try pulling up on your calculator on your computer or on your phone. See what happens. Should get like an invalid input or an error. That's because you can't take the square root of a negative number. There is no number that when squared will give you a negative answer. So if we're trying to get an answer of negative 4, 2 times 2 is 4. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. We want negative 4. So this is where the quadratic comes in handy. That's why it didn't work on the graphing or the factoring. It's because of this negative right here. But there is a way to finish solving. So I'm going to take that problem from where we left off, and I'm going to take that negative out, and I'm going to put an I in front of the square root symbol. Negative comes out and becomes an I, and that I stands for imaginary or complex, where I is equal to the square root of negative 1. So I'm taking out that negative. That way we can now solve. What is the square root of 4? 2. But simplifies a little bit further. Now, last thing we want to do is simplify this fraction. So when we simplify a fraction, we're going to simplify this side, and we're going to simplify this side. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2, and 2 divided by 2 is 1, so I don't need to write the 1 there, but we still have that I, so that I is there. Now that plus and minus came through all the way through the problem. The first video had you split it up, once with the plus, once with the minus. So we can do that, but we can't simplify it any further because of the I. So we are going to leave it as negative 2 plus or minus I.